Have you ever felt that whisper inside your consciousness? That subtle voice trying to guide you through the noise of everyday life, yet somehow just beyond your grasp? Perhaps you've experienced moments of profound clarity, when time seemed to stop and you felt connected to something greater than yourself, only to lose that connection as quickly as it came. Many of us walk through life feeling spiritually disconnected, as if we're missing a fundamental frequency that could tune us into divine wisdom. We sense that there must be more, that somewhere within us lies the capacity to commune directly with the divine source, yet we remain trapped in spiritual silence. The ancient mystics and Gnostics spoke of a sacred gateway within the human brain, the pineal gland, what they called the seat of the soul, the third eye, the divine antenna. They understood what modern science is only beginning to recognize, that this small pine cone-shaped gland nestled in the center of our brain serves as more than just a producer of melatonin, but as our spiritual interface with higher dimensions of consciousness. Throughout history, spiritual seekers have discovered methods to activate this sacred center, allowing them to pierce the veil between worlds and hear the voice of God directly, without intermediaries or institutions. This knowledge, once reserved for initiates in mystery schools and esoteric circles, has been systematically suppressed, leaving humanity spiritually orphaned, cut off from our divine inheritance. But that disconnection ends today. The techniques I'm about to share with you are not based on blind faith or religious dogma, but on ancient wisdom validated by contemporary neurological understanding. These practices have transformed my own spiritual journey from one of desperate searching to one of direct communion. And they can do the same for you. The divine voice you've been straining to hear has never been silent. It has always been speaking. You simply need to attune your inner receiver, your pineal gland, to its sacred frequency. The concept of the pineal gland as a spiritual organ of perception stretches back to the earliest Gnostic traditions. While modern science identifies it primarily as an endocrine gland that produces melatonin and regulates our sleep cycles, ancient spiritual traditions recognized it as something far more significant. In the esoteric branches of Christianity that flourished before institutional suppression, this small gland was understood as the physical manifestation of what Jesus referred to when he said, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." This single eye, this inner lamp, was not a poetic metaphor, but a direct reference to the pineal gland, positioned centrally in the brain where the left and right hemispheres converge. The Gnostic understanding of human consciousness proposed that we exist simultaneously in two realms, the material and the spiritual. Our physical senses connect us to the material world, while the pineal gland, when properly activated, serves as our receptor for divine frequencies. The French philosopher René Descartes called it the principal seat of the soul, recognizing it as the connection point between our physical and spiritual natures. Throughout the ancient world, this understanding was represented symbolically, from the Eye of Horus in Egyptian tradition to the pine cone staff of Dionysus in Greek mythology, from the uraeus serpent on the foreheads of pharaohs to the third eye dot worn in Hindu traditions. These diverse cultures were all pointing to the same profound truth, that humanity possesses an inner organ of spiritual perception that, when awakened, allows direct communion with divine consciousness. The calcification and dormancy of this gland in most modern humans explains the spiritual amnesia that plagues our society, the sense of separation from divine wisdom that leaves so many feeling adrift in a meaningless cosmos. By understanding the pineal gland through both spiritual tradition and modern neurological research, we can begin to grasp why its activation is essential for those seeking to hear the voice of God within themselves. This is not about religious conversion or dogmatic belief systems, but about restoring our natural capacity for divine communion that has been systematically forgotten in our materialistic age. I can sense that many of you watching right now are at a critical juncture in your spiritual journey. Perhaps you've tried traditional religious paths and found them lacking direct experience. Maybe you've explored various spiritual practices, yet still feel that something essential is missing. I understand this struggle intimately. The feeling that divine wisdom must be accessible within us, yet somehow remains frustratingly beyond our reach. Before we continue deeper into these ancient practices, I'd like to ask you a question that cuts to the heart of your spiritual experience. Have you ever had moments when you felt you almost heard the voice of divine wisdom speaking to you, only to doubt yourself and dismiss it as imagination? If you've experienced these fleeting connections, or if you're still waiting for your first clear divine communication, please share your experience in the comments below. You might simply write, "I'm seeking to hear the divine voice clearly for the first time," or "I've had glimpses of divine communication but struggle to maintain the connection." Your sharing does more than you might realize. Each comment creates a field of resonance that strengthens the collective spiritual awakening taking place right now. Many seekers suffer in silence, believing they're alone in their spiritual struggles. When they read your experience, it validates their own journey and gives them courage to continue. Remember, in Gnostic understanding, we are not separate beings, but interconnected aspects of divine consciousness. By sharing your experience, you're helping to heal the illusion of separation that keeps humanity from its spiritual birthright. Now, let us continue our exploration of the sacred technologies that open the gateway to divine communion. The ancient texts that form the foundation of Gnostic Christianity contain numerous references to the pineal gland and its activation, though often in symbolic language that required initiation to fully comprehend. In the Gospel of Thomas, discovered among the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945, Jesus speaks directly of this inner vision when he says, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is within you, and it is outside you." This teaching points to the fundamental Gnostic understanding that divine presence is not distant or separate, but immediately accessible through inner perception. The Gospel of Mary, another text suppressed by institutional Christianity, records Mary Magdalene's mystical experiences and direct communication with Christ consciousness through her activated pineal center. She describes visions and communications that came not through physical eyes or ears, but through inner perception. The Pistis Sophia, a Gnostic text containing esoteric teachings of Jesus after his resurrection, describes in detail the process of spiritual light descending into the human body and activating the inner eye of wisdom. These texts collectively present a Christianity very different from mainstream traditions, one focused on direct gnosis or knowledge of divine reality through personal experience rather than belief or dogma. The Apocryphon of John, another Nag Hammadi text, explains how human beings became trapped in spiritual forgetfulness when the waters of forgetfulness, a reference to calcification of the pineal gland, prevented humanity from recognizing its divine nature. The secret book of James records Christ teaching specialized breathing techniques that activate the pineal gland, similar to those we will explore shortly. Even in canonical scripture, references to this inner perception appear, as when Jesus says, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light," in Matthew 6:22. These textual foundations confirm that early Christian mystics understood and practiced pineal activation as central to spiritual awakening, viewing it not as a cult or forbidden knowledge, but as the essential teaching that would allow humans to fulfill their spiritual potential and commune directly with divine consciousness. The human brain contains a remarkable feature that most people never fully utilize, a feature that serves as our biological interface with divine intelligence. When we understand the mechanics of pineal activation from both spiritual and scientific perspectives, we can approach the practice with greater clarity and effectiveness. The pineal gland sits protected in the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, bathed in cerebrospinal fluid rich in neurotransmitters. While science acknowledges its role in melatonin production, what's less discussed is its unique cellular structure that shares similarities with our retinal cells, containing photoreceptors that make it sensitive to light. Even more remarkable, the pineal gland contains tiny crystals of calcite, similar to the piezoelectric crystals used in technologies that convert energy from one form to another, making it capable of receiving and transducing vibrational frequencies beyond our normal sensory range. What the ancient traditions understood intuitively, modern science is now confirming that this small gland functions as a biological receiver for frequencies of consciousness typically filtered out by our everyday awareness. When dormant or calcified, as it is in many people due to environmental toxins, poor diet, and spiritual neglect, this gland fails to perform its higher function. We become limited to material perception alone, cut off from the subtle, energetic realms where divine consciousness communicates. The spiritual blindness that results is not our natural state, but a condition of neglect, like an atrophied muscle that has forgotten its strength. The process of awakening this inner receptor involves several interconnected levels of practice. First, we must address the physical calcification through detoxification and specific nutritional support. Second, we must stimulate the gland through precise breathing techniques and focus of awareness. Third, we must refine our inner perception to distinguish between imagination and authentic divine communication. As we work with these practices, the dormant crystalline structure of the pineal gland begins to resonate at higher frequencies, creating what Gnostic texts called the crown of light, or the immortal body of light. This awakening occurs gradually for most people, beginning with subtle sensations of pressure or tingling at the center of the forehead, progressing to visual phenomena such as inner light or geometric patterns, and eventually opening into clear intuitive knowing and direct spiritual communication. The divine light spoken of in spiritual traditions is not merely metaphorical, but a bioelectrical reality experienced through this awakened pineal function. When Jesus spoke of being full of light, he was describing this activated state where divine consciousness flows freely through the opened pineal gateway, illuminating our entire being with spiritual understanding that transcends intellectual knowledge. One of the most significant illusions that prevents humanity from experiencing divine communion is the belief that material reality is primary and consciousness is secondary, a mere epiphenomenon of brain activity. The Gnostic perspective, increasingly supported by quantum physics, suggests precisely the opposite, that consciousness is the primary reality from which material existence emanates. When we begin to recognize this truth experientially through pineal activation, we undergo a profound reversal in perception. What we once thought was solid and real reveals itself as a kind of dream or simulation, while the invisible realms of consciousness present themselves as more substantial and significant than the physical world. This perceptual shift is what the Gnostic texts call awakening from the dream of separation, or seeing beyond the veil of forgetfulness. The pineal gland serves as our biological interface for this transformation of awareness. Within each human being lies a spark of divine essence, what Gnostics called the divine spark, or pneuma, a fragment of pure consciousness that exists beyond time and space. This eternal aspect of our being remains largely dormant until the pineal gland is activated, at which point we begin to identify less with our temporal personality and more with our eternal nature. The process is similar to waking from a dream and realizing that the dream character was not our true identity. The voice of God that we seek to hear is actually the voice of our higher or complete self. Speaking through the activated pineal gateway, it does not command or dominate, but illuminates and clarifies, revealing the limited nature of ego consciousness and expanding our awareness to include transpersonal dimensions of being. This is why Jesus taught, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," and why Gnostic texts emphasize that salvation comes through knowledge, gnosis, rather than belief or ritual. The methods I will share for activating this inner gateway are designed to gradually dissolve the illusion of separation and reveal the unified field of divine consciousness that has always been our true nature. As the pineal gland awakens, we begin to perceive reality through what mystics call the eye of the heart, rather than the dualistic mind, experiencing directly the truth that we are not separate beings seeking connection with God, but expressions of divine consciousness that have temporarily forgotten our essential nature. To begin working practically with pineal activation, we must first address the physical barriers that prevent this gland from functioning optimally. In our modern environment, several factors contribute to pineal calcification, including fluoride exposure through water and dental products, electromagnetic pollution from wireless technologies, poor diet high in processed foods, and chronic stress that disrupts natural melatonin production. A gentle detoxification process can help restore the pineal gland's sensitivity. Begin by filtering your drinking water to remove fluoride or using spring water when possible. Reduce exposure to artificial blue light, especially in the evening hours, as it confuses the pineal gland's natural rhythms. Incorporate foods that support pineal health, including raw apple cider vinegar, raw cacao, chlorella or spirulina, organic MSM, methyl sulfonyl methane, and foods rich in iodine like seaweed. A simple daily practice involves mixing 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar in a glass of filtered water each morning, which helps to gradually dissolve calcium deposits in the pineal gland. Beyond these physical preparations, specific meditation practices directly stimulate pineal activation. Begin with a simple breath awareness exercise performed in dim light or darkness. Sit comfortably with your spine straight and focus your attention at the center point between your eyebrows, what esoteric traditions call the third eye position. As you inhale slowly through your nose, visualize breath energy moving up your spine and into the center of your brain, where the pineal gland resides. Hold this breath gently for a few seconds, while imagining a soft light illuminating this central brain region. As you exhale, visualize this light expanding throughout your entire brain and body. Practice this breathing pattern for 5 to 10 minutes daily, gradually increasing the duration as you become comfortable with the technique. Another powerful practice involves sound resonance. The pineal gland is sensitive to specific frequencies, particularly those associated with the note A at 432 Hz. Humming or toning this note while focusing on the pineal region creates vibrations that help stimulate glandular activity. You can easily find recordings of 432 Hz tones online to use during meditation. As you work with these practices consistently, you may begin to experience subtle sensations, including pressure or pulsing in the forehead area, brief flashes of light with eyes closed, unusual dreams or synchronicities, or spontaneous insights that seem to arise from beyond your normal thinking process. These are all signs of increasing pineal activity and the beginning stages of heightened spiritual perception. Remember that this awakening process is gradual for most people, unfolding over weeks or months of consistent practice, rather than producing immediate dramatic effects. As the pineal gland becomes more active through consistent practice, many people begin to experience what might be called the early signs of divine communication. These initial experiences often come in subtle forms that are easy to dismiss if we're expecting booming voices or dramatic visions. The voice of God within usually begins as gentle, intuitive nudges, spontaneous insights that seem to arise from a deeper place than your normal thinking, or what some describe as thoughts that think themselves. You might notice an increase in meaningful synchronicities in your daily life, where external events seem to align perfectly with your inner questions or concerns. Dreams may become more vivid and meaningful, sometimes containing guidance or information that your conscious mind couldn't have known. Some practitioners report seeing geometric patterns or colors with eyes closed during meditation, an experience the mystic traditions call sacred geometry, representing the underlying mathematical patterns of creation. As pineal activation deepens, these communications may become clearer and more distinct. You might experience what feels like a loving presence accompanying you throughout your day, a sense of being guided or protected even during challenges. Some people report hearing an inner voice that is distinctly different from their normal mental chatter, characterized by greater wisdom, compassion, and a perspective that transcends personal concerns. If these teachings have resonated with your soul, if you've felt that spark of recognition that signals truth beyond intellectual understanding, I invite you to continue this journey with our spiritual community. Every week, We explore ancient wisdom made practical for modern seekers, offering clear guidance for those who sense there must be more to life than what mainstream society acknowledges. By subscribing to this channel, you'll receive consistent support for your spiritual practice, advanced techniques for pineal activation as your journey deepens, and connection with fellow seekers who understand the challenges and joys of authentic awakening. The path of direct divine communion isn't always easy in a world that values material success over spiritual realization, but walking it in community provides strength and clarity that's difficult to maintain alone. If today's exploration of the pineal gland and divine communication has sparked questions or insights, please share them in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what another seeker needs to hear to take their next step forward. For those who wish to go deeper, we've created a free guide with additional practices for pineal activation and developing clear divine communion, available through the link in the description. Remember that you were never meant to walk through life disconnected from divine wisdom. The voice of God within you is your birthright, your inheritance as a spiritual being having a human experience. The practices we've explored today are simply the beginning of remembering what you have always been, a direct expression of divine consciousness, temporarily exploring life through human form. I honor the sacred journey you're on and the divine light that shines within you, even now beginning to illuminate your path more brightly as you reclaim your spiritual perception through the awakened eye of the soul.